Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live weekly assembly on Sunday, January 17th, 2021. In a world that is so broken, it is good to be present as a congregation. Whether this is your first visit or you've been with us for decades, we are glad that you are here with us as a part of our gathered community. As a part of keeping this community connected, we invite everyone to make use of the chat during assembly and to stop by our Zoom coffee hour immediately after assembly. The link for the coffee hour will be available in the chat, and it can also be found in the most recent emails from FUS. Please stop by this social time for as little or as long as you like, and enjoy our new feature that allows you to move among breakout rooms on your own. Our monthly theme for January is imagination. Here are the words of Unitarian Universalist minister Lisa Friedman, who serves the UU Church of Minnetonka. We live in a fragmented world that tempts us to despair. We would put it back together piece by piece if it were ours to choose. But sometimes the fragments are enough. In a world of cruelty, there is still power in every act of kindness. In a time of doubt, there is still power in every act of hope. In an age of division, there is still power in every act of unity. May we remember that sometimes the fragments of meaning we make are just the right size to hold in our hands. Come, let us gather in community.
Good morning. I'm Allison Wyeth, Director of Religious Education for First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, and it's my pleasure this morning to bring you our Time for All Ages. So let's let our young ones have a moment to gather around, get settled, and get comfortable. Okay, I'm going to start with a question. Have you ever seen a race like this? This is a photo of the United States women's relay team. The runner on the left has finished her portion of the race and is handing off the baton to the runner on the right to continue the next leg of the journey. In this kind of race, each participant must do their part as best they can and then hand the baton and the rest of the race over to others. When we at FUS talk about social justice issues, it's helpful to remember this idea. No one can run a relay race all on their own. Each person must do the part that is in front of them to do. And each person depends on those who come before them to move the baton forward so they can carry it even further. Today, I'm going to tell you about one of the people who brought the baton of justice forward in her turn. This is Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. She was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1825, when many Black people in the United States were still enslaved. Yet she herself was born free. Her parents died when she was very young, and she went to live with her uncle, William Watkins, an educator, a person who worked for the end of slavery. That's what's usually called an abolitionist, and a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME Church. Ms. Harper took the baton from her uncle and also became an educator and an abolitionist. She also became a writer, publishing her first book of poetry at the age of just 20. And She was the first African American woman in the United States to have a short story published as well. In her writings, she urged Black people, women, and people in oppressed groups to take a firm stand for equality. In 1850, when Ms. Harper was just 25, a law was passed in the United States that stated that slave owners could claim any Black person who they said was a runaway slave and force them into slavery. So for her safety, Ms. Harper moved further north, eventually settling in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There she taught, ran part of the Underground Railroad to help those escaping from enslavement move to safer parts of the country or to Canada, and lectured around the country on the importance of ending slavery. A few years later, in 1863, those who worked to end slavery celebrated an important victory as the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted. However, it did not immediately create a world where African American people were treated equally and fairly. So Ms. Harper kept working, kept carrying the baton forward. She put her efforts toward women's civil rights, in particular, the rights of Black women and the right of all women to vote. During her work and lecturing to support and educate about these causes, Ms. Harper met many Unitarians working on the same issues and came to feel at home with our liberal religious tradition. She joined with the Unitarians by joining First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia in 1870. She often read her poetry in service, and though she kept her membership and even taught Sunday school at an AME church, when she died in 1911, her funeral was held here at First Unitarian of Philadelphia. Though Ms. Harper died before the passage of the 19th Amendment, which secured the right for women to vote in 1919, it was a cause she worked very hard to bring about. She understood that her part of moving the baton forward might not be the part that allowed her to personally see the freedoms she hoped for. In her writings, she said, "Apparent failure may hold in its rough shell the germs of a success that will blossom in time and bear fruit throughout eternity." Some of these fruits of Ms. Harper's labor and that of other Unitarian Universalists are enjoyed by us today. In fact, in this coming week, another woman of color, Kamala Harris, who is both Black and Asian, will take the baton that Ms. Harper helped move forward and be sworn in to the second highest elected office in our country. She will be the first woman, the first Black woman, the first Asian woman to hold this level of authority in our country. And even with this moving forward and achievement to celebrate, we know we are not done. Oppression still exists in our world. We must all take up the baton and run our part of the race. We must be grateful for those who got us as far as we are now. We must be determined and proud of those who work alongside us to carry fairness and equality forward. And we must be hopeful for those who will sit in the FUS Assembly Hall in the years to come and who will take us to places of justice we might not have dreamt of. So friends, may you do your part, and may the relay race continue until justice is won.
Each week when we gather, we light our chalice and share one of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, or one of the aspirations of our congregation. This week we light the chalice remembering the 5th principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, within our congregations and in society at large.
Now for our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. After more than a century practicing congregational humanism and bridging the gap between the religious and secular worlds, First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is still unique in our pursuit of a community that values and promotes the open-eyed and evidence-based free exchange of often dangerous ideas. Join us as we continue the search for truth, meaning, and justice, and help keep the voice of Unitarian Universalist humanism loud and strong by considering a gift. You can find us on PayPal, the Give Plus app, or firstunitarian.org/donate. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Bob Adderholm, president of the FUS Foundation, here once more to introduce you to another of this year's Kirk Pearson Social Justice Fund recipients. As many of you know, the Pearson Fund is one of 9 funds that the Foundation Board manages. Mibbs and Perry Pearson created the fund in memory of their son, Kirk, who died of AIDS at age 29. It's the purpose of the fund to provide support to nonprofit organizations doing the social justice work in our community that Kirk cared so deeply about. Annually, FUS members nominate nonprofit organizations, which then apply for a grant. A vetting team chooses from among the applicants, and this year we were able to distribute $4,200 to 5 of the 10 nonprofit applicants. I'm pleased to have with me Otis Sanders, who's the CEO and president of Ujamaa Place, which is the recipient of a $1,000 Pearson Grant. Otis, please introduce yourself and tell us about Ujamaa Place and your role and how the Pearson Grant funds will be used.
Good morning. First of all, on behalf of the entire Ujamaa family, I want to thank you and the people that recommended Ujamaa for a Kirk Pearson Social Justice Award. We are humbled and just honored by this great award. I think that we do fit the spirit of this award and be happy to tell you about who we are. Again, my name is Otis Sanders, and I serve as the CEO of this organization. This is a position that I've held for 8.5 years of our 10 years of existence. And prior to coming to Ujamaa, I served for the Minnesota Department of Corrections for 35 years. And my last 15 years as warden at the juvenile facility in Red Wing. Ujamaa is a social justice agency. Our primary mission is to eliminate barriers that really affect young people that has been historically marginalized. They try to keep them out of the criminal justice system. So our model is a prevention model, but we also serve as a re-entry model for young people that do get caught up in the system. Mm-hmm. Our target age population is 18 to 30. We do find ourselves working with younger men to try to help them identify barriers that interfere with their life as a young adult and before they get emancipated as out of juvenile jurisdiction. So we proudly now serve 37 services. Most of those programs are to prepare people for life. Our holistic model is about stable housing, job readiness, and as well as strong wellness and education attainment. A lot of young men that come to our program reading and writing at the 8th grade level, and our job is to prepare them for their GED and hopefully post-secondary work. I think our biggest accomplishment has been to stabilize young people's lives. And our mission is transformation, but our ability is to get these young people, make them self-worth, to make them stabilize so they can get on to and take care of themselves, their family, in the community that they loved here. So the biggest thing that we also do in advocacy work is to let people know that these young men are not always just criminally thinking, but there are different circumstances as they navigate a life dealing in the intersection of racism and poverty. That poverty is the driving force behind these issues here. So in our mind is to understand that people make choices a lot of times. A lot of times they wrong choices, but we should not be so judgmental about those choices that we don't know the choices they had to choose from. And that's basically what we're doing, getting people to understand that the mistake that you made as a young man should not define your future. So again, as we about stabilizing our guys, preparing them for employment, dealing with their trauma, sometimes there's generations of trauma, we put them on a pathway to prosperity.
Excellent. Otis, one more question for you. If members of our congregation wanted to get involved in the type of work that you're doing, in terms of supporting that work, what would be the best way to do that?
We would love to some volunteers. We have so many things that's needed in terms of what we do daily, as well as advocacy work. I would really encourage them to visit our webpage at times at ujamaplace.org, or please call the office. Just ask for any one of my staff, and I would love to receive that call. Again, Otis Zanders at 651-528-8006. We have volunteers to help with every element of our pillar, doing legal assistance, as well as tutoring, just being role models, helping people get driver license. So we take care of all the little things that people need to overcome barriers to put them on a pathway to prosperity. So we do have a lot of opportunities. We have clothing needs. We also need a system for guys, just that mentoring piece, just showing them the life. If anyone have a business, we would love to be for some apprenticeship operation, because we prepare those guys for success, and we just need an opportunity is the rainbow for these guys.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Otis. And I'm sure that everyone watching this presentation is delighted to be supporting the incredibly important work that Ujama Place is doing for the young men it serves. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you to your congregation for the award. Thanks, Bob.
On Sundays when we gather, we take a few minutes to reflect on the joys, sorrows, and milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this to remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. And we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating joy or in facing the burdens of life. This morning, as we pause for our moment of silence, we know our country is on the cusp of great change. And we also know that there are many things that will not change right away. May we always remember that, daunting as things might seem, human beings can solve human problems. Reason, strategy, hard work, cooperation, and joy will be needed in abundance in the weeks and months ahead, and may each of us find what we need. And may we find ourselves grateful for the relationships and communities that sustain us through times of upheaval, grief, rage, loss, hope, and renewal. Let us now share a moment of silence.
Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, this is one of those songs that you just throw your head back, put it in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, lift me up, yes, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, hold me close, yes, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close. Yes, hold me close. Oh, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse, please, hold me close. Oh, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. All you have to do is just ask. The light is always there. Always. Oh, yeah.
Some of you are old enough to remember the early days of Saturday Night Live and the not ready for primetime players. In that first season in 1975, each week, Chevy Chase, as the weekend update anchor, would announce, "This just in, Generalissimo Francisco Franco is still dead," which satirized the long-running announcements in the news in the previous weeks about Franco's impending demise. These days, I'm an early riser, and my spouse, Mike, not so much. Each morning of the past 10 days, I have greeted him with the news, "This just in, the Republic still stands." It's only a little bit funny, and these days it's not a given. And it is exhausting to live in this time of unfolding history. Are you exhausted too? We are. In 2007, in the early days of the election campaign that would lead Barack Obama to his historic win as the first Black U.S. president, he gave a speech at Brown Chapel in Selma, Alabama, that became known as the Joshua Generation speech. It may help us to know more about the Moses and Joshua story as we talk about this. In the legends of ancient scripture, Moses led the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt. The title of the book Exodus refers to this movement of people. During the 40 years of wandering in the desert, in biblical terms, 40 years just means a long time, Moses develops the leadership of his assistant, Joshua, and sends him along with other spies to check out this land that God has promised to them, the promised land. Moses gets a glimpse of the promised land, but dies before the Israelites can conquer the Canaanites who live there. Do you know the song, Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho? According to legend, Joshua conquered the ancient city of Jericho with the help of Rahab, a woman who helped with his reconnaissance. And Joshua led his people into this promised land. There is much to say about U.S. settler colonialism in relation to this story, but that's for another talk. Then Senator Obama's speech looked backward and forward in the movement for human and civil rights for all Americans. He acknowledged with deep gratitude the work of leaders like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Diane Nash, Rosa Parks, and others. He said, and he knew that he stood on the shoulders of giants, and that the work for full inclusion, full humanity was not complete. His speech was a call to action for a new generation of activists to continue realizing the never yet fulfilled promise of the democracy of the United States. His election as an African American man to the highest office in the land signaled for many that the promised land had been achieved. He was able to cross over into the promised land. You may know that the night before he died, Martin Luther King said in the great speech, "I have looked over and I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we will get there." You may remember all the articles about a post-racial America after Obama's election. Of course, that has not been achieved. And one wonders if in a country as scarred by racism and white supremacy culture as ours has been, if we have a hope of realizing this promise. And yet, it is ours to take that baton, as Allison told us in the story. It is ours to relentlessly pursue this full inclusion, full humanity and civil rights, because to fail to do so, to pursue, is to give up accountability, integrity, ethical obligation. Indeed, it is to give up our humanity. This is the work of humanism, of our faith, that people, the full inclusion of every person is more important than ideas. That is not to say that ideas are unimportant, but rather that we not cling to them when they harm others, even inadvertently. Each generation is both the Moses and the Joshua generation, the one that imagines and the one that is tasked with fulfillment. To be progressive means, of course, to progress, to move forward, not only in understanding, empathy, compassion, but equally in social reform that improves the lives of those outside the dominant culture, which already benefits from its centrism, from being dominant. The people who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th were overwhelmingly white and male. The dominant culture in this country has ever been overwhelmingly overwhelmingly white and male. The Moses generation of founding fathers did something no other society had ever successfully done before. They said that the people should get to decide how and by whom they are governed. By and through them, the world was turned upside down. Their vision was powerful and it was flawed. They could make no room for the full humanity of the indigenous people of the land, for the people who were enslaved, for anyone who didn't own property or was non-white or was non-male. Powerful and flawed. Every generation since has included both Moses and Joshua, imagining a new and better future as far as their vision could take them, and unable to go as far as the next generation. Some of us look back on those founders with dimming respect. Our respect for them dims as we learn more. As we learn more about how the basis of our democracy was anything but all-inclusive. It behooves us to know that, because some future generation of Joshuas will look back at us with all our good intentions in much the same way. How we tell stories of democracy, of who is human, of what is truth, and what facts mean is crucial to our enterprise. In our opening reading, Lisa Friedman frames fragmentation as just what we need to see parts of the whole. In the centuries since industrialization, what we hold in common as human beings continues to fragment. The 20th century philosophies of deconstruction and postmodernism, all the rage in academic circles in the 90s and early 2000s, reminds us that who tells the story matters immensely to the context, to the meaning that we take away from it. For people who have traditionally held systemic power, telling the story of the greatness of our country may contain a sense of grandeur and promise. For someone who is without systemic power, the story of the greatness of the United States is by turns hollow, cruel, and evil. The riot at the Capitol, and indeed the national news of the past several years, has been marked by alternative facts, as if there are alternative facts. Is this ignoring of easily provable fact supported by evidence, the facts that are supported by evidence, is this the end result of this fragmentation of truth? Truth is what I say it is. What is open to interpretation and what is easily provable by empirical evidence are very different. How we make meaning from interpretation and from evidence are the project of justice. To whom will we listen? Whose story will we give priority? Whose voice has not been heard and deserves hearing? Who is not in the dominant culture receiving all those benefits? Who needs to be brought in from the margins? Many of us are rightfully worried about what may happen this week leading up to the inauguration, as our capital is locked down, both in the nation's capital and in St. Paul. I saw some of you on the chat saying when we saw that beautiful video being filmed in Washington, it was heartbreaking to think what is not possible this day. Many of us are worried, and we see the rise of anti-democracy seditionists aided by people who are in power. What many of us want more than anything is a return to sanity, to the health of our country. And this begs the question, what sanity? The sanity of the status quo? For whom did that work? for whom. It did for me, but I know not for everyone. One thing I do know is this, that holding our elected officials accountable for continuing to expand the notion of who has power, who has full inclusion in human and civil rights, and how we make our decisions, that's our work. That is the work of justice. Holding this new administration accountable for making economic decisions that benefit the most vulnerable, for making policy decisions that benefit the planet and her people over profits, for supporting voting rights for everyone over and above the rights of a limited few. While we celebrate the inauguration of Kamala Harris as the first Black, first Asian, and first woman to the vice presidency, let us continue to call on our elected officials. Let us call them to their highest good. Let us always remember that we have not arrived, but if we do our work, we are always arriving and always paving the way for the next generation of Joshuas. Let us not hold on to that baton, but be ready to pass it. And let us continue to pursue our highest good, asking, what is my part? Is it to reach across the aisle and try to understand and influence someone I know for justice? Is it to find common cause with those who reside outside the dominant culture, those whose voices are often silenced? I myself need reminding that these are not mutually exclusive. To listen to the voices of those who are not in the dominant culture and to reach toward that dominant culture and say, we must listen. Let us expand what it means to be in that center. When my colleague, the Reverend Tara Parrish, admonishes, white people, get your cousins, she is talking to me about some of my cousins. The work of our congregation goes on to, in ever rooting out where internalized white supremacy culture lurks in our institution, unknown and quiet, but doing its work all the same. The First Unitarian Society Moving Toward Equity team is looking at our structural documents to find out if there are ways that we can continue our goals of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Things in our bylaws, for example, or the ways we've always done things. Where is internalized white supremacy culture lurking, and where might we bring the astringent of sunshine to that? One of the things that our Moving Toward Equity team is promoting the 8th principle project of the Unitarian Universalist Association. You heard me talk about that a couple months ago. I'd like to invite you to save the date, mark your calendar for Saturday, March 13th, when we'll have a workshop with Paula Cole Jones, who is one of the founders of the 8th Principle movement. And we'll find out more about what it means for us to take this baton, to build on the anti-racism work of this congregation. Those of you who marched at Selma, those of you who have done anti-racist work for a long time. What does it mean to take this baton and move forward in accountable relationship? These days of living in history at, as they are saying a lot on the news, the inflection point of history, leaves many of us filled with trauma, rage, grief, despair, a sense of powerlessness, and also hope. Also hope. Let us not forget that the baton itself holds hope. I want to close with this prayer for protection written by our colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Wen. She writes, for Black, Indigenous, Muslim, Latina elected officials, for the residents of Washington, D.C., for each of us who has ever been handcuffed or tear gassed or afraid of the police or white supremacists or our government. For each of us who is afraid every day for ourselves or our loved ones or our children in this country, may we be protected. May we be protected from generations of violence and hate, from pandemic and sickness and fear. May we be protected not because we have earned it, but because of the generous grace of justice and spirit. And may those of us who can be protectors protect. Be pourers of tea for ourselves and others, builders of power for love for ourselves and others, reminders to breathe and eat and fight and tend, to rest and risk so we may all be protected. And in our doubt and stress, may we rest in the air and the earth and the sky that have seen governments come and go, despots and haters come and go, that hold our bones and our breath with sacredness and survival. Here are the words from the Senator-elect Reverend Raphael Warnock. Will we play political games while real people suffer, or will we win righteous fights together, shoulder to shoulder? Will we seek to destroy one another, or heed the call toward the common good, building together what Dr. King called the beloved community? May it be survival and justice. May it be shoulder to shoulder. May it be beloved community. This is our prayer. Blessed be, and amen.
Join me from home in our extinguishing the chalice words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Woke up to a world that is changing. Looking out the window got me wondering lately, will we be okay? Will we be okay? One day I can feel the sun shining. Next day a bullet can leave a mama crying. Will she be okay? Will she be okay? Tell me, will we be okay? Will she be okay? Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. I got $25 in my pocket, and I think another 10 in my glove compartment. I'm trying so bad not to cry, but it's hard to stop it. But you say all of my needs, you promise you got it. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. Why do we hate one another? When love is the most beautiful color, it takes away the gray. okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. See, our love is great. This season of pain, it won't last always. Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. You've got $25 in your pocket, and you think another 10 in your glove compartment. But that family with no food would trade places with you. Give thanks and don't forget how you got it, and you're gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. Okay, okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. You gonna be okay.
Thanks so much for joining us today. On this Martin Luther King weekend, may we renew our commitment to the long journey toward justice and freedom. The Unitarian Transcendentalist minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker wrote, "Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. So may it be." Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.